Today let's take a painting created on plein air in a different direction. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Well, I really am into the finishing up business of paintings that were begun in a plein air session. I think partly it's because I really started to feel very nervous and stressed out by all those sketches that pile up in my studio, and I don't know, it's, you know, that feeling when you just absolutely have to reorganize furniture, or I don't know, bring some law and order onto your desktop. This feels like one of those moments when you really have to have a clean studio and only new works in the starting blocks and none of the older ones lying around. Now I wanted to dive into a more recent creation of mine that you might have seen if you are following me on YouTube, and it is this little number here that we have painted together on plein air in my local woodland here in France, where you can see all of those beautiful snowdrops peeking out and announcing the beginning of spring. The fact that I'm filming this video is due to a number of coincidences maybe that now have influenced my artistic choice. First of all, when I first saw these snowdrops, I absolutely wanted to have a square, small format, and preferably one of my wood panels. Now, the only ones that I still had in stock in my studio were those that were coated in several layers of gold paint. Once again, this dates back to really another era when I wanted to create a series of close-ups in the forest, and I wanted to have them semi-realistic and go for a bit more decorative direction than what I usually do with my landscape paintings. I didn't have any time left when grabbing this wood panel to recoat it. So I, from this point on, had to make work the composition that I found in the woodland with this style of painting. Not only did I not have the time to paint it over, but also it made sense in a way. This is why I didn't abandon the whole idea, because it typically fell into the category of those foresty close-ups and not the big vistas that I'm usually painting. And I told myself that it might work out really well with this little snowdrop scene. At any rate, I would have to go back to the studio and finish this up, because this is not, once again, a stage that I consider to be completed. I like to have more details and more realistic of a style than what I managed to get within this plein air session. And once I had to go back to this, at any rate, an idea formed in my mind, which was to take this painting in a completely different direction from what initially anticipated. By that I mean I want to make sense of all of this decorative style that we have here, and still make it work to coexist with my other paintings of Scotland. So I thought, whilst this is not a typically Scottish scene, which is normal because I did paint it here in France, there might be a way for me to make it fit into the whole Scottish theme, and this is by taking it into a folklore direction. What I mean by this is, you might be aware that I'm also working on lino prints, and especially my monochrome lino prints are very much folk inspired. So they are based on fairy tales or folk tales around either places or animals. So they are very much in a style of a illustration from the beginning of the century, for folk tales basically, and I did illustrate a couple of folk tales this way, so I thought maybe this would be the occasion to try exactly that out in an oil painting format. It would be a good fit, I believe, also for this more decorative style where you have the golden background. So the more I thought about it, the more the pieces fell into place, and I thought, let's try it out and we'll see how the feedback from you guys will be, how the clients and collectors would react to that, and then we'll see what we do with this maybe new type of paintings in my works. So once I have decided on that, I started to think about different types of Scottish folk tales and which would be the most fitting for this particular painting. Of course, you take flowers, sunlight, spring together, and what do you think of instantly? It's all those folk tales about fairies, right? So this is exactly what I wanted to do. I thought that we might include a fairy in here, but without going down the very literal, the very childish route maybe, and have something that would easily topple over into the category of a cliche. This is why I dug out all of my symbolist artist albums that I could think of in that moment, and I started browsing through, because this is for me the epitome of not kitsch, not too romantic or childish in any shape or form. If we talk about symbolists like Gustave Moreau or Stuck or the different Belgian painters, one might think about Odilon Redon as well. So we would go down a more mystical, a less realistic and a less detailed route here, maybe with more contrasting colors. Now, because of this painting, I briefly considered including a whole group of fairies, because this is how they are supposed to appear in the folk tales. But ultimately, I thought that it would maybe not be the best decision for the composition. It would be too cramped into one space, and yeah, did not feel as balanced as I would like it to be. So in order for it to work, I would have had to move around several trees, and I just didn't feel like it, because first and foremost, it was a painting from Plein, so it was supposed to represent a particular moment and a particular place, a particular mood. So I didn't want to go back and rearrange all of that just in order to fit my creative idea of 2 weeks later, right? This is why I've decided to go for one female figure here and to place it somewhere in between the fallen branch and the tree that is a bit further away. It was a bit tricky finding the perfect spot for it, because you risk always either to go too much to the left and therefore having the background tree stick out of the female figure, or for it to be too much on the right side. So yeah, it is a bit tricky to find the perfect spot, but I think I have something in mind that will work out nicely, or at least I hope so. So let's find out if it will work out and dive into the painting. Let's go. And that is the future me cutting in real quick, because when I have finished editing this video, I then had very exciting news that I absolutely wanted to share with you guys. And it is that one of my lino prints, actually this one, Whispers of Bygone Days, has been selected to be part of the shortlist of Jackson's Art Prize of 2025. And this is exciting news, not only because Jackson's Art is such an institution, and of course having your actual work judged by big names in the industry and a great guest judge panel, and then last and not least, it is of course great that now my print will be part of not one but 2 exhibitions. One in August, which is the actual Jackson's Art Prize exhibition, and as part of the Affordable Art Fair in May. But I did not cut in to do some humble bragging, but because I actually wanted to let you know that as we speak and until the 6th of April, if I'm correct, there is a vote going on Jackson's Art website where you can vote for the artwork that you love most, because there is a People's Choice Award as well. Of course, if you like what I do, and especially if you like this particular print and you want to help it win the People's Choice Awards, then I would be extremely honored and pleased if you would take 2 minutes out of your day to vote for this print. I will leave the link in the description box down below. So yeah, if you do not want to participate or for XY reasons cannot vote, please at least send me positive vibes and cross your fingers for me. And I thank everyone who is considering to vote for me in advance. Thank you so very much. And thank you all of you for being with me on this journey, supporting my channel, me, my work, and leaving encouraging comments here and on Instagram. Thank you so very much. And now enough about that, and let's go back to the painting session. I start off by raising the horizon line with some background trees and then filling in the space with grass. I establish the middle tones first and go in with some dark shadows afterwards. I paint in some additional trees to create some more interest in the horizon and build some depth. I then go in with my comb brush to create some texture, switch to a flat square brush to bring in some variation in the brush strokes before adding some individual grass halms with a small brush. I take my comb brush again and add some highlights in the background grasses and alternating their direction. Now I mix some silver paint with white to create the impression of a pearlescent mist in the background. I now move to the foreground, adding in some faint highlights hinting at the snowdrops. I decided to create an area in the foreground where the ground lies bare without grass to increase depth and color variation. Now that the paint has dried a little, I bring back some of the trees that were smudged too much. I now start adding detail in the foreground trees, painting in the bark and the moss. I use more blue tone greens for the shadows and some warm tone greens for the highlights to give the whole more contrast and more dimension. I start working on individual grass halms in the foreground, trying to keep both the color and the value varied. I then move back into the middle and background to increase some shadow areas that got lost in the process a little bit. I add detail to the ground on the bottom of the painting, increasing shadow and highlights and varying the undertone of the browns to give it more complexity. It is also time to add the highlights in the foreground grasses before adding in the flowers. And now let's add the fairy. This is after all the centerpiece of the painting. I start by rubbing out the paint in the area I wanted to add the fairy to. I then proceed to painting her dark hair and creating a light base for the dress and her skin. Once the base is done, we can start building the highlights in both dress and hair, adding some blush to her cheeks and sculpting her face. I go over her face a lot, as you can see, because I struggled being precise at that small of a scale. I then decide to lengthen her dress to give her a bit more presence and give her coral colored shoes to add a color accent to the figure. Like with the grasses before, I then add the deepest shadows and the highlights to her skirt and her hair until I'm satisfied with the 3D effect. Finally, I bring back some shadows around the fairy to help her figure stand out in the scene. Now we can start working on the snowdrops. I take my doe foot brush to help paint the distinctive shape of the snowdrops in the foreground. But I don't need to be as precise in the background. I also only use the pure whites for the foreground flowers, whereas I use both some cooler and warm-toned variations for the background to give the scene a more natural and less monotonous look. To increase the decorative effect of the painting, I decide to outline the trees and the fallen branches. Now that the paint is dried, I also add some brighter silver whites to the background to create the illusion of light piercing through the mist. I also decided to give her a white and red flower crown to resonate with her coral shoes. And that's it. I hope that you found it entertaining to see how a work might be created through several stages, how one finished work might undergo a real development in the mindset of the painter, how it could evolve from something that was supposed to be something quite realistic and a plein air painting to something much more symbolist and undergo a change both in style and intent. Now, I would be very curious to know what you think about this style of painting. What do you gather? Should I continue going down that route? Do you think it works, or do you think I should rather stick to what I know and continue doing just good old realist vistas? What do you think? I really am quite undecided. Although I like it, it is a bit of a change for me, and I don't know, it feels good in the way that it helps me mix things up and not get stuck in my ways. On the other hand, it is of course always a bit unsettling if you change the style or the genre. I don't know. I would be very grateful for any feedback that you guys would consider giving me in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I hope to see you very soon in my next video. Until then, have a lovely morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. Cheers guys, have a nice one.